everybody. Oh boy, here comes everybody. Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. Please, if you're comfortable, we'd love for you to turn on your camera so we can see your gorgeous faces today. And forgive me, in about 3 minutes, I'm going to get dinged. I got to put a sourdough in the oven. I'm experimenting with flours the last couple weeks to see which flour I like most best. So hopefully we'll be, yes, most best is not proper English, but it's cute. So I keep it. And hopefully we'll all be chatting then. Format is the same if you've been with us before. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat. You can raise your hand. There's a little hand raise button. Let's start by everybody jumping into the chat and telling us where you're from. I see we've got someone from Kansas. And I am here in the Catskills, and our amazing Melissa Steele is in Maine, and the extraordinary Nicole Hazy, co-founder and CEO of Modern Prairie, is in sunny Southern California. Okay, we have Michigan, we have Ontario, Oklahoma, Georgia, Kansas, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Madison, Wisconsin, Eldred, New York, a neighbor of mine, Birds, Oregon, Idaho, Alaska, Florida, California, South Carolina, Waukesha, Wisconsin, Iowa, Washington. Wow, we're all over the place. This is so awesome. Well, welcome.
Melissa, it's called Waukesha because, as a fellow Midwestern, it's called Waukesha, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Thank you. Waukesha. Good gravy. Iowa, Waukesha, and I stand corrected, and that will never happen again. Everybody, we're going to have a really fun conversation about chicken nutrition today with our poultry maven and queen, Melissa Steele of Fresh Eggs Daily. I've already learned so much from her. I'm so excited that everybody's going to get a chance to hear from her and talk to her. I'm getting beat, so I'm going to throw this sourdough boule in the oven, and I'm going to let Lisa introduce herself and give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, and I'll be right back.
Great. Sounds good. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm so excited about this second talk, which is the second one I've done with Melissa. And today we're going to be talking about feeding your chickens. It's a little windy here, so I apologize, but it was just so nice that I wanted to sit outside because, as she mentioned, we are in Maine and we've had a really long winter. So I'm getting a little vitamin D and a little windburn maybe. I get a lot of questions about what to feed chickens, how to feed chickens. It's obviously one of the most important parts about raising them. So we're going to cover some of the topics that seem to come up a lot, some of the questions that seem to come up a lot. Absolutely, if you have a question, put it in the chat and we will definitely try to answer as many as we can. The last talk we did, we answered questions. We talked for an hour, and then afterwards, I think there were 3 pages of questions that I answered offline. So be sure to ask your question, and if we don't get to it, we absolutely will get it answered and then distributed to everybody. So I guess I'll wait a second for Melissa. I don't think it takes that long to put your bread in the oven.
Right there.
There you go. There she is.
I have sticky fingers. Hold on. Can you vamp for 1 more second while I wash them off?
Absolutely. Yeah, so Melissa and I connected. We are about the same age. I grew up watching Little House on the Prairie, and I had chickens as a kid. And I guess technically Melissa had chickens as a kid because they were chickens on set. And she is a huge lover of animals and a supporter of rescues and all that. So we kind of connected, and we're just having a blast. She's fairly new to chickens. I'm not, but it's always fun to try to help. And I'm so glad that so many of you are interested in these topics because I think they're super, super important. So anyway, that's what we are doing today. And she's still not back. I don't know how long it takes to put bread in the oven, Melissa.
I'm back. It was a little, and so I had dough all over my doughy fingers. Here now, and I don't know how this one's going to turn out because it got a little stuck to its cloth. So we'll see. It's an experiment. Yes, at least I was listening while you were chatting, and I am a relative newbie chicken mama. We've had our chicken since 2020. Sorry, my dog's in love with me. I don't know what this is. Chicago, if you don't know her. And I'm so happy that I was able to connect with Lisa because, once you get chickens, and especially during 2020 and lockdown when chickens were so hard to get because everybody was thinking that they should have chickens, there was a lot, and there still is a lot of misinformation out there. When you Google chicken care, backyard chicken care, keeping chickens safe, chicken first aid, what to feed your chickens, especially, there's just so much wrong information, actually, and bad information. So we got together and became fast friends, Lisa and I. And with Nicole and Lisa and I, we decided that we really wanted to find a way to connect with our community so that Lisa and with Olive could share all of her wisdom with us about everything to do with chickens. So we'll be doing probably a couple more of these on different subject matters, but we're starting with what to feed your chickens. And I was surprised. I was surprised by how much they can eat. That was what surprised me initially, because my assumption, I grew up with on-set chickens. They were real chickens and they laid eggs and everything, but they just ate scratch. I don't know what the heck the wranglers would throw the seeds down, the scratch down when we wanted them a specific spot when we were filming.
Yeah.
I know, but I did not know that there's a whole world of really great stuff that not only can you, but you should feed your chickens. And then there's also a whole world of stuff that you really shouldn't. That the surprising thing is how many items that are on the don't feed list that I would not have known about. So without any further ado, let us chat about feeding chickens. Lisa, what's the biggest mistake people make when it comes to feeding their chickens?
Definitely the biggest mistake, like you had mentioned, is going on social media and just asking random people questions about what to feed chickens, because it is very, it's scientific. Chickens have been studied for a long time. There are companies that actually have scientists who formulate feed. I know a lot of times, because I do everything natural and I use herbs and all this other stuff, and I'm very DIY. I have new chicken people, saying, I want to make my own feed. I want to mix my own. I don't want to use commercial. What's your advice? And I think they get very disappointed in me, because my advice generally is you really should use a commercial feed. It's chickens more than other animals because they do lay eggs. It takes so much energy out of them. They really have to have a very balanced diet in order to be at their optimal best. And that's not saying I don't add a lot of things to their diet, but I really think your base should be a good quality commercial feed. Yes, when we film the TV show, same, we throw our chickens scratch grains or grubs to get it where we want it to go, but they would not do very well on a diet of that. Scratch grains are, they're cheap. The chickens love them, but they are like crack. They're not nutritionally balanced. They shouldn't be their main feed. So I think you should do some research, find a very good quality commercial feed, whether it's crumble, pellet, whole grain, organic, non-GMO, like whatever you personally decide. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, and go with that. And then on top of that, then you can start adding in, other things like supplements. They need calcium, they need grit to help them digest their food and also make, strong eggshells. And then, the kitchen and garden scraps and weeds and grass. And chickens are omnivores, so they literally can and will eat anything. And, there are people who say chickens should never have treats. And to me, that's like a really sad way to live, because they love them. And I do think, a hen can decide to push nutrients that she eats into her eggs. And flavor to a certain extent, not specific foods, but the more well-rounded diet she eats, the better tasting the eggs are going to be. So we give our chickens almost all of our table scraps. They can eat grains and meats and fish and fruits and veggies. They can't digest dairy, so it's best not to give them a ton of like cheese and, milk products and things like that. But the list of what they can eat is very much more than what they can't eat. I get people saying, can my chickens have stale, like leftover birthday cake? Well, yeah, they can. It's not like super nutritious on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's not going to kill them. I'm very liberal about what I give my chickens. I don't like to waste food, so they get almost everything, but the healthier you eat, the healthier your chickens are going to eat. So if they're eating whole grain breads, whole grains, if you're eating a lot of sweet potatoes and vegetables and lean meats, those are all great for your chickens.
I actually, I get my commercial feed from a company called Scratch and Peck. Do you know
Mhm.
Scratch? I love the fact that they're non-GMO, that they're all organic, and I mix a lot of different things together. I have the feed, I have the pellets, I have grit, I have all of it, and then I have your supplements on top of it. What are some of the things? Table scraps. Oh, here you go. Here's a question right here. Two questions. First of all, the Murmas family wants to know, what do you feed your chickens, Lisa? What feed do you use?
So I have used almost every feed on the market. Obviously I work with feed companies. I've gotten paid by a lot of them, full disclosure. But I also have worked with almost all of them, and I have the luxury to choose which I think are the best to work with. So as far as like a Scratch and Peck type, Small Pet Select also has something very similar. It's the whole grain, cracked grain. They also have a sustainable scratch, which I love. It's all non-GMO. So I think either of those are great choices if you're going to go with the whole grain. If you're going to go with a commercial, like conventional, a crumble or a pellet, there's tons. ManaPro, and ManaPro actually has a duck feed, which is really nice. Don't necessarily go for the cheapest feed. Chickens will only eat as much as they need as far as nutrients and energy for the day. So you might think you're saving money by saving a few dollars on a bag of feed, but they're going to eat more of it. So the higher quality feed, the less they're going to eat. So in the long run, you do save money. Chickens eat about a half a cup of food a day, give or take. If they're out on the lawn all day eating bugs and stuff, they're going to eat less. If you do a fridge clean out day and they get like a bunch of old wilted salad and all kinds of stuff, they're going to eat less. Less in the summer, more in the winter. So give or take, but about a half a cup a day. And then treats. I don't measure them out, but I try to limit it to like a tablespoon or two per chicken a day. Chickens are not very big. So a tablespoon of snacks is actually a lot, per chicken. But again, it's just random. Sometimes they get more, sometimes they get less. Sometimes I'm afraid to go down there because I really don't have anything for them and I don't want to show my face without treats, so you kind of like hide from them for the day. So it just depends.
I have a question here from Simran, who wants to know, in terms of table scraps, can you talk about quantities and how often?
Yeah. Again, I don't measure, I do clean out the fridge pretty regularly and just put everything into a huge bag and throw it all out there. And then they all fight for it. So I'm sure the more aggressive girls are probably getting more. Some of the others are getting less. I try to throw it in a couple piles. If you have some chickens that are mean and tend to hog the treats, but if I'm giving like a scratch grain or a grub or something like that, that's kind of easily measurable, I will figure about a tablespoon per chicken a day. And I give them in the late afternoon. There are chickens that'll hold out and they won't eat waiting for those treats. So you definitely want to give them their food and water in the morning when you let them out. And then I give snacks in like late afternoon. So they're not just holding out and just eating the snacks because they're jerks like that.
That's what we do here when we have our free range time at the end of the day, just before dusk. So I know they'll go back in.
Mm-hmm.
And they now know that's when they get their treats. So I actually have one, Coco, will come and knock on the door to the kitchen if I'm not out there with the blueberry.
Hey, lady.
And if I'm not in the kitchen, she goes around to the front door off the deck and knocks on the glass door for me to give her blueberries. She has to have blueberries or lettuce or parsley or corn, fresh corn.
Nice.
That's her treat. And
those are all good ones.
The chickens will come, but they'll take off. But she's the one who leads the charge and knocks on the door. It's hilarious.
That's funny. Before we move on, actually, I do want to touch on what you should not feed your chickens. It is a pretty short list. And again, every time I talk about things that are toxic for them, people say, well, my chickens eat that and they don't die. You have to remember, toxic does not mean immediately fatal. It means there are toxins in it. And if the chicken is young or older or already, struggling with something, I feel like there's so much you can feed chickens that like, don't go out of your way to feed them things that aren't good for them. Nightshade family, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, they are toxic. I mean, there are toxins in the nightshade family. I give them the fully ripe tomatoes. If I'm going to leave them into my garden, like in the fall, I pull out the eggplant and tomato and pepper plants and throw them, into the woods. So I don't go out of my way to feed my chickens those. Avocados are toxic to most birds, so you want to be really careful about that. And the seeds of stone fruits, apple seeds have cyanide in them. Peach pits and apricot pits and cherry pits have, is that also cyanide? Something in them.
Ice, arsenic, something.
Yeah, so don't go out of your way to feed like pits and seeds of things to your chickens. Again, they'd probably have to eat a ton of them, but it's good to know what things can be a problem. And you don't want to feed anything that's moldy or rotten or like stale, wilted, expired. All that is fine. But if something is really, really grossly whatever, and you don't want to feed them, caffeine, no tea bags, no coffee grounds, no chocolate, and no beer and wine. You want to stay away from the alcohol.
I can't even imagine what would happen if my child started drinking. There's two questions that are kind of amazing. First of all, Nicole said, can we chat about stages of feed? Like there's chick, starter, grower, layer. And
yes,
while we're talking about that, also, Charlene has a question about ducklings. She's just starting out with ducklings and she plans to let them free forage daily. Should she let them forage for themselves before offering other feed?
Okay, so, and actually first, I just saw a question go by about cantaloupe seeds. Melon seeds are fine, are great. Pumpkin, squash, melon, cantaloupe, all of those are really actually very nutritious for them and thought to have a coating that's a natural warmer. So absolutely those kind of seeds are great. It's just the stone fruit seeds you have to watch out for. Okay, so stages of feed. Basically, you're going to start your baby chicks on chick starter feed. It is crumbled, so it's small. It is a little bit higher protein, and it has all the nutrients they need. So hatch to 8 weeks, starter feed. Then you want to move to a grower feed, which is a little bit lower in protein because they're going to be growing a little bit slower. And it's also still the crumble. It's smaller pieces for them because they are smaller. You want to feed that grower feed until they're about 18 or 20 weeks old. Not a science when you finish your last bag. And you don't have to mix, like dogs, you have to like slowly transition to a different feed. You don't need to do that. You can just go cold turkey, switch to the next level. So then 18 or 20 weeks, you're going to switch to a layer feed, which again has a little reduced protein, but it has added calcium because they are going to start laying eggs. And you also want to start putting out a calcium supplement. So crushed oyster shells, or once your chickens start laying, give them crushed eggshells. They do need that supplement in addition to the calcium that's in the layer feed. If you have younger chickens, pullets say, who aren't laying yet, you can put out the oyster shell in a separate container or dish. They will not eat it. Roosters won't eat it. So it's only the laying hens that know that they need it, will eat that oyster shell. And you also want to provide some sort of grit to your chickens. I have to laugh because one of the feed companies actually includes grit in their feed, which, grit is dirt. Like we have a dirt driveway. So when we let our chickens out to free range, they run into the driveway and they pick up small stones and pebbles because they keep it in their crop. And that's what they use to grind up their food because they don't have teeth. And this feed company has brilliantly decided to add grit to their chicken feed, which it's dirt. You're paying for, dirt and small pebbles in your chicken feed. I always feed the grit separately. I let them use the driveway. And then since the driveway is frozen and under snow for much of the year, I do scoop up like dirt and driveway stuff and whatever, and I put it into their dust bath in the winter. So they still have that grit. I think that answered the question. Oh, if you have a mixed flock, like say you have, like Melissa has chickens, she might be adding chicks this spring. So once your chicks are old enough, they don't need the heat, 8 or 10 weeks old, they're going to go in with the others. You've, separated them. They've all gotten to know each other. You're going to have to put everybody on the grower feed until your youngest chickens are about 18 or 20 weeks old. It's not going to hurt the older hens to be on the grower feed. Just make sure you have that extra calcium out for them so they will eat more of it too. You'll notice if you switch your laying hens to a grower feed, you'll go through oyster shell or eggshell like crazy because they know they need that extra calcium that they're not getting in the feed. But that's not going to hurt them because they can easily supplement. If you give younger chickens layer feed, that extra calcium can actually lead to kidney stones later in life. So when you've got a mixed flock like that of younger and older, you put everybody on whatever feed the younger chickens are on until they are about 18 or 20 weeks old. Oh, I kicked my phone.
Great. All right. So
I
back
forget the second question.
The
Oh,
duck
ducks. Was it ducks?
She's planning to let them free forage daily. Should she let them do that for themselves before offering other feed?
So like you, I let mine out in the afternoon. Unless you're going to be home all day long and you feel like watching them all day long, it's going to be hard to get them back inside if you let them out early in the morning. I also find that there's fewer hawks in the afternoon. You know, I think the hawks are out early. They're looking for food. They're looking for mice. And then once the hawks find what they need, they kind of seem to go away. So I like to let mine out in the late afternoon. So I would let the ducks have their feed and water first thing. And even when I'm free ranging, if I'm going to be, out gardening a couple days in a row, so they're free ranging all day, I still put feed and water in their run. And the doors are, propped open so they can come and go, because honestly, some of mine are kind of lazy at foraging. They don't really want to make that effort, and they just want to go and eat their food out of the tray. So I do think it's important to put it out, because again, they know what they need, how much they need. So it's good to always leave them food out. And if you're free ranging all day, they're probably not going to eat much of it.
Interesting. That's really interesting and logical, which I love. Mary Kay has a question. She says that lately she has one hen who started to lay more soft shell eggs. She has, along with other hens, they have access to oyster shells. She gives them their own crushed eggshells too, and they get good feed and your supplements. Is there something more she can do for this hen? The hens are 2.5 years old.
If it's only one, it's probably something genetic. Sometimes soft-shelled eggs can be caused by some kind of illness or disease, or it's just genetic that one hen isn't absorbing the calcium the way she should. So giving bigger pieces can help. I know a lot of times you'll read, that you should pulverize the eggshells, and you really should give them in sort of bigger pieces, because they take longer to dissolve in their body, so more of it absorbs. There also is a thing called liquid calcium. You can get at any pharmacy. A drop or two of that might just be a little extra calcium that she needs that might help with that. But if it's just one, it's definitely something genetic with her, because everybody else seems to be doing fine.
Great. Okay. And Simran has another question, and I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Feeding day-old baby chicks. I found that my babies don't love the chick starter crumbles. She uses the one you recommend and ended up grinding them up and adding warm water at the beginning to make kind of a paste for the first several days. Now they're about a week old. She's giving them dry, but still ground. Is this okay?
Yeah. I mean, even day-old chicks with the crumble, it's not, too big for them. You can add water. Like in the summer, I'll often add water to my chickens' feed because it gives them a little extra hydration. They really love it. They act like it's a treat when really it's just their regular feed. So, whatever you can do to get them to eat it. But I kind of feel like at this point you have them trained, and I can tell you, I would not be grinding up my chicken's feed. I've tried to switch to pellets, which they hate. The ducks literally pick them out one by one and throw them on the ground. So I've learned I can't feed pellets. If pellets is the only thing that I can get, I do have to add water to it and let it all mush up and stir it up, and then they'll finally eat it. But yeah, the day-old chicks should be fine with the crumble the way it is, but there's no harm in adding water to it. Just obviously throw it out at the end of the day. You don't want to leave it overnight, and there's a chance it could mold once it gets wet.
A great question also from Simran. After they're fully grown, do we need to do anything differently with their food during the biannual molting process? Now, let me just tell you really quickly. My girls molted this last year, and they hadn't molted yet. So this was our first molt. And the first thing we thought was, we walked outside and there were feathers everywhere. We thought, oh my God, the fox actually got in, because we've lost a couple to a fox. But then I did a head count. Everybody was there. They're just a little thinner. And that's when I realized, oh, we're molting. Okay. And boy, did they, oh boy. I mean, I could have stuffed a pillow. So should we be feeding them differently during molting?
Some of the feed companies do have, I don't remember the exact names of the feeds, but they do have like extra protein feeds that you can put them on. That do give them a little extra protein. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. I just, I give them extra sunflower seeds. Sunflower seeds are great sources of protein. Plus they have the great oils in them. I'll be more apt to give them, fish or meat scraps, which our poor dog, our corgi loves salmon skin. And during molting season, if we have salmon, the ducks get it instead. So, protein treats are really great. Mealworms, grubs, things like that. But you can leave them on. So some people actually switch off the layer feed in the winter. Yes, feather fixer, that's the name of it. Thank you, Marvin's family. Some people switch off the layer feed in the winter and they'll switch to a grower feed because, you know, no one's really laying. And so they don't need extra calcium. But to me, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's usually no price difference. And I usually have, you know, 1 or 2 younger chickens or a duck or somebody who still is laying. I also feel like they expend so much calcium while they are laying that winter is a really good time for them to build those stores back up again. If they don't get enough calcium to lay their eggs, they start leaching it out of their bones. So, you know, any of us older women know that, you know, osteoporosis, like that's a thing. So I feel like leaving them on the layer feed over the winter, it gives them a break from laying. It lets them replenish their calcium. But I know a lot of people switch to the grower feed in the winter, which to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. They technically can get too much calcium, but if you're putting the oyster shell or eggshell separately and not mixing it into the feed, I think they're going to self-regulate themselves. And once they do start laying, those calcium stores are going to go way down.
2 things really quickly. Someone did ask if they can get too much calcium, and I see
Mhm.
Simran. I now pronounced your name correctly. Thank you for the phonetic spelling. And just the end of Simran's question was, at what age can she start giving them more treats? She has the little babies.
Mhm.
Right now, she's only given them kelp, oregano, garlic, thyme, and egg yolk. So what
Nice.
age? Good stuff.
Very nice treats. Yeah. So when the babies are in the brooder up till, you know, 8 or 10 weeks old, I do try to stick to that, you know, scrambled eggs, weeds, grass, herbs, some oats, like just kind of the basics, because I really do want them to fill up on their chick feed because that's their balanced diet. Once they go out in the coop, it's a free for all. You know, they're in with all the older hens and they're getting everything that the older hens are getting.
Egg yolk. Okay, so let's debunk this. If you feed your chickens eggs, will they eat their own eggs or will they not eat their own eggs? Because there's a whole, it's very controversial. It may seem minor to some people, but it's a very controversial thing. And I have yet to feed eggs to my chickens. So, Lisa, help me.
Yeah. So I have not done scientific studies on this, but in 14 years of feeding my chickens eggs, I feed them cooked eggs, I feed them eggshells, I feed them, like if I break an egg in the coop in my pocket or something, I will just throw them that egg raw, the eggshell. I don't always, you know, air dry and crush the shells. Sometimes I just break the egg in half, throw them the shells. The ducks especially love them. They crunch them like potato chips. My personal belief is that if they're getting what they need, they're not going to go looking for something else. So if you're feeding them eggs and, you know, if you feel more comfortable scrambling them, that's fine. They love scrambled eggs. When we have extra eggs in the summer, everybody's eating scrambled eggs. I feel like if you're giving them what they need, they're not going to go looking for something else. Yes, occasionally an egg breaks by accident. You know, someone steps on it or the shell is a little soft. But in 14 years, I have never had anybody just randomly start eating their eggs. And I give them eggs pretty regularly. They're so nutritious for them. You know, just before the baby chick hatches, it absorbs the egg yolk into its body. So kind of like they're born eating eggs. You know, I think if you're not feeding your chickens your extra eggs, you're missing out because they really are so nutritious for them. And I think they, like other animals, they know what they need. And if you're giving them what they need, they're not looking around, you know, going to stomp on all the eggs in the nests and break them and eat them.
Ryoko has a question. Adding apple cider vinegar and garlic to feeds. Is there anything else we can add to feeds?
Yes. So not to be like a huge giant commercial, but I do have a line of feed supplements that I love, Melissa loves. They are made right here in the United States in a lab, a poultry lab, by a nutritionist. I was using these things. They were made for dogs and horses. You know, we had horses when I first got chickens and we gave our dog all kinds of healthy stuff. So I was giving the sea kelp and the probiotics and the brewer's yeast, but they were all formulated for horses and dogs. So finally the lab said, let's formulate them for chickens. So I do have the brewer's yeast and garlic, which if you have ducks is essential for them. They need extra niacin. So if you have chickens in with your ducks, you can feed them chicken feed, but they need the extra niacin. And I do have the probiotics. The sea kelp, I personally just think they're so nutritious for them. So like Melissa probably does, you know, I take a bag of feed, I dump it into my trash can, I mix in all those supplements, maybe some sunflower seeds, some grubs, you know, in the winter, I might actually add some scratch grains in, just, you know, make them oats, I just make them this big thing, mix it all up. These are available on Amazon and Chewy. You can just search Fresh Eggs Daily supplements. They're all designed to do different things to work, with each other, in conjunction with each other. And we have this cute little sampler kit now on Amazon. So if you have baby chicks or you just want to try them all out, you get 4 little minis. So maybe Nicole, or at some point we can put the link, but if you just go on, and look for Fresh Eggs Daily, all my stuff comes out.
I also get from Scratch and Pack, I add in herbs and flowers.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not dry. Well, they're dry flowers, but I add in a bunch of herbs and flowers, which are also, I also have nesting flowers in with my ladies have shavings. They don't have straw. They have shavings. And I have nesting flowers in there. And I find that one of the things it accomplishes too, is it helps with odor, and it keeps things kind of, there's a lot of lavender in there and rose petals, and it just makes it seem more pleasant for them.
Exactly.
The Murmas family's chickens are outside all day. Should they not do that? I feel like that's depends on where you are, right?
So, free ranging is never going to end well. It's only a matter of time. It just takes one predator one time. So I think if you have chickens and you free range them and you have not had a problem, it's just because you haven't had a problem yet. Do it long enough, and there are predators everywhere. They're watching. In fact, yesterday I had been letting everyone out because it's been beautiful. We don't have snow. The ducks are going down to the brook and everyone's just crazily running around the yard. And yesterday I didn't let them out. I was still inside working. I looked out the window and a coyote was trotting across the field at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If I had had them out yesterday, I would have lost at least one, if not more. So you have to figure out your level of comfort. For me, I am super cautious and then kind of get lax about it. And then something like that happens and now everyone's under lockdown until I kind of forget about it and let them out again. So I personally, like Melissa does, like I do, I think I keep them in the morning. They're eating their food, they're laying their eggs, they're, talking about last night, how everybody was, whatever. And then in the late afternoon, I let them out. And if I have gardening to do, if we're having a barbecue or washing the car, I'll do all that stuff. I'll mix new feed, I'll clean the coop while they're out. It's great. I would love to leave mine out sun up to sundown every day, but I just know that I would lose them and that would be really sad. So I try to mix it up. You don't want to get into routines. Predators sit in the woods and they watch routines. Certain times a year or worse now is terrible because everyone's got babies to feed. And you've also got young, coyotes and fox who might take chances more than older ones might. So yeah, it's all your level of risk. It's 100% wonderful for them, but also if you don't feel comfortable, I know that they can be happy in a pen, in a large run. I'm planting trees in mine now. I'm trying to grow some lilac bushes in there. I've got little evergreens in there. They've got a swing, they've got a dust bath. So however you choose to do it is the right way.
I will say this about I'm going to digress and go into a coyote mini rant for a minute. Something has happened to the coyotes in this country since lockdown. My sister just sent me a video footage from one of her security cameras. My 8-year-old nephew was in the backyard in broad daylight playing with his new puppy. And thank God my other nephew, my 14-year-old nephew, was there. And a coyote just came right out and tried to walk up behind my 8-year-old nephew to get the puppy on the other side of him. And my big nephew ran and grabbed the puppy and my little nephew ran away. And the coyote was in the backyard in Los Angeles in broad daylight. They are brazen and hungry. Okay, here's a good one. Chick feed, medicated versus non-medicated, pros and cons.
Personally, I don't use it. I'm not a big fan of giving things proactively, like other than natural things. I think you could do a lot with natural. And I don't really think that medicated feed is necessary. I read something years ago. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Gail Demereau, who's written a bunch of books on chickens also. And she said to put clumps of dirt and grass into your chick brooder, because that brings in some of the outdoors. You're bringing the outdoors into the brooder, and your chickens, your baby chicks' immune systems are now jump started because they're not being bombarded, but they're getting small amounts of different things in the environment. And to me, that's a more natural way of keeping them healthy than just putting medication in the feed. So I don't use medicated feed, but I do put dirt. in their brooder. And believe it or not, dirt is a lot cleaner than shavings, and they love it. They'll nibble the grass. They look for bugs in it. You know, they just really love it. And it looks like a little terrarium. It just makes me happy because it's just like a little, it's like they're outside, you know, and then you just dump the whole thing out and, you know, get more grass clumps and redo it. So I started doing that many years ago, and it's worked really well. And someone did mention that the medicated feed is not good for ducks. Ducks are super hardy and they don't tend to get coccidiosis and a lot of the things that chickens get. So ducklings should definitely never have the medicated feed.
Hold on, I'm backing up. Okay, here's a question from Rebo. What do you do when they eat their own eggs before you get to collecting them? Now, we just said they generally don't, but what do you do?
I mean, it is a bad habit. Maybe one broke or they were fighting over a nesting box. They decided that they tasted good. Honestly, what I would do is I would start feeding them eggs, you know, try to get them out in the run, feed them eggs so they, you know, get the taste of it. And this is probably like against what all the experts would say. Try to get out there and collect the eggs as soon as possible so they're not sitting in the boxes, you know, do it a couple times a day. So get the eggs out of the boxes as soon as possible and then start feeding them, like say scrambled eggs and eggshells, so they're not going looking for those eggs. And that totally might backfire and they might start eating all of them because it is a really bad habit once they start it. But I just saw somebody said, if you have ducks with chickens, yes, if you raise ducks and chickens, they can all eat chicken feed. It's kind of hard to find duck food and you don't want to have to separate everybody. That would be a pain in the neck. So I just add the brewer's yeast with garlic. Ducks need more niacin and this gives them the niacin they need. And it's also really good for chickens. Brewer's yeast is amazing for us. So it's not going to hurt the chickens at all.
Is layer feed, does it have any kind of negative effect on a rooster?
I mean, technically they don't need, like if I had a whole flock of just roosters, I would feed them grower feed because they don't need the extra calcium. Realistically, if you have one rooster and a bunch of hens, like what are you going to do? Separate him at every mealtime? Like it makes no sense, you know, so they just eat the same. And that's another good reason to put the calcium supplement separate. So he's just, you know, eating the layer feed and not the supplemental calcium. But I mean, we had a duck who ate chicken layer feed for 12 years. He lived to be 12 years old and had no problems. And he was a Drake. So no, I think realistically, you just have to feed him with the chickens.
Okay, there's some fun stuff happening here. Laura Wittern Keller said, if your chickens are eating eggs in the coop, get some wooden eggs and put them in the nesting box. Once they pick at that, they'll stop trying.
Yeah, take out the real eggs, put in wood or even rocks, golf balls, just something that, you know, they can't break as easily.
And then Mary Kay, I give my hens fresh corn on the cob, which I do as well. And I've seen some people say corn isn't good. Some say it is good. A lot of dried corn isn't good. Could you just clarify what corn is good? Can we give them corn? When should we give them corn? Before you even, I know that fresh corn obviously is better than dried corn. And in summer, you should probably give them as much fresh stuff as you can because of the hydration. But in the winter, have a little cracked corn, I don't think it's gonna explode.
No, absolutely. I mean, corn's not the most nutritious thing in the world. You know, a lot of the lower quality chicken feeds, the main ingredient is corn. You know, it's not the most it's not as nutritious as grains and things. So as far as like a main diet, no, they shouldn't just be eating corn. Corn from the garden, absolutely. If you want to buy frozen corn or, you know, whatever, that's great. Like you said, in the summer, cucumbers, watermelon, corn, anything with water in it's going to be great for them. And in the winter, cracked corn, scratch grains are mostly cracked corn. That has a benefit in the winter because they create energy and warmth digesting it overnight. You know, so if you're going to give them cracked corn, I would only give it in the winter before bedtime. Stick to the fresh corn when you have it. And like everything, I mean, my chickens get such a wide variety of treats that I don't think they get the same thing 2 days in a row, you know, because I'm either giving them stuff from the garden or, you know, stuff from the fridge or whatever it is, or like I need to go around the lawn and pull up some dandelion greens pretty soon here, you know, so they get a wide variety, everything in moderation. Absolutely.
I do a really fun thing in the summer on the really, really, really nasty hot days. My girls get spa water. So I get a big old tub and I fill it with ice water and sliced cucumber, sliced strawberries, sliced all watermelon, like the juiciest fruits I can find. And I put it in a big thing with ice and water to keep them. Because when I see them panting, it really upsets me. So I want to cool them down as much as I can and hydrate them as much. And they
Love it.
they
Love it.
love
My ducks
it.
do
I
too.
throw in a little mint and some parsley, and they just have the best time. I suppose you could even freeze ice cubes
Mhm.
of fruits, mints, and things, and fully constituted vegetables, and then just throw those in with your water, and then that'll dissolve. Or even frozen peas.
Yep. Well, see, if you're going to get ducks, frozen peas will be your best friends. Ducks love that. Yeah, that's really important. And it's kind of funny to me that people freak, like on social media, they freak out in the winter. Their chickens are going to be cold. Do they have to heat their coop? How are they going to keep their chickens warm? Chickens are super cold hardy. Even here in Maine, we don't heat our coop. The chickens are fine. It's the summer you have to worry about. Definitely more chickens die of heat stress than from the cold. They like it between like 45 and 65 degrees. So once it gets warmer than that, like at 80 degrees, sometimes our chickens will be panting. And that's a very real problem. I make my own electrolytes, but I'll add electrolytes to their water, do what you did, give them watermelon, anything to keep them cool. And so few people, more people worry about the cold than the heat, which is surprising to me because most animals do much better in cold temperatures than warm. Warm is hard on cats, it's hard on dogs, it's hard on horses, it's hard on chickens. Ducks don't care because they just have pool parties all summer. But
All right, here's a good one. I have 2 1-month-old ducklings that freak out when I pick them up to clean their crate. Is this normal? I've had them since they were 3 days old.
yeah, ducks are very suspicious characters. They, while they're ducklings and teenagers, if you try to catch them, they will act like you're going to catch them and eat them. Just put them right in the stew pot. As they get older and mature, and they get used to you more, you hand feed them, they do settle down. But yeah, ducks are very suspicious of people when they're younger. They that's definitely normal. They don't like to be picked up per se. They don't fly. So I'd sit on the ground with them and like put them in your lap, or they like being carried around far less than chickens do. I think chickens kind of like to be carried around sometimes, the ducks not so much. So get down on their level and just kind of like play on the ground with them and see if that helps.
There's still a little heated versus not heated coop conversation going on here. And of course, I mean, this Triple F Farm Studios, Kim is in Alaska, and that's some cold also. They aren't heated, and she makes sure there's ventilation and wide perches. When I first got the chickens that first winter, I was a little flipped out too, because it was so cold, and I thought, oh, they're going to get cold. What am I going to do? And I was sitting in the living room kind of really stewing on this and doing a little bit of research, not going too deep into the Google because I don't trust it. And a sparrow flew out front and landed on the deck. And I was typing and worrying. And then I went, wait, that sparrow is like 1/10 of the size of my birds, and that's fine. So the chickens should be fine. What am I worried about?
What's interesting to me, yeah, this woman from Alaska says, no, I don't heat my coop. And then you've got people in like Georgia or Tennessee who email me every winter and say, it's going to get down to 45. I'm just really worried about my chickens. And, it's always the people who don't live in the cold climates that think they need to heat their coop, whereas people that live in the cold climates kind of, get it. And I guess we're kind of more cold hardy too as people, because we live where it gets cold.
Yeah, maybe. And also as a perimenopause or a postmenopausal woman, I prefer the temperature between 65 and 75. Once it goes over that, I start panting and I need spa water.
Yeah, it's much easier to warm your chickens up. I mean, they're in a nice, warm, dry coop. They're fine.
I will say this, watch, if you're new to chickens, I had this happen my first winter, watch your water, because the water will freeze and then they have no access to water. So now we have an aluminum water with a heater underneath in the winter to keep their water warm.
Yeah, water is the hardest part I just use an electric dog water bowl because we have the ducks. So you're going to have to switch if you get ducks, because ducks learn very quickly. They can empty those gravity waterers and make mud puddles. So you fill it up, they empty it, and you're done. So ducks need like tubs. So I just use the electric dog water bowls, plug them into an extension cord.
Oh, fantastic. Simran says, I know we have to worry about chicks drowning if we decide to get ducks and give them a small pond. Is drowning still an issue for adult chickens?
So we have a kiddie pool. The chickens can stand up in it. I mean, it's only, like this high. So if a chicken did indeed like fall into it, all they have to do is stand up. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. With chicks, I do worry. Like if I've had baby chicks in my coop before, and when I do that, I don't fill the kiddie pool, and I try to put like the duck tubs up on something, so the chicks won't just randomly fall in by accident.
Katie Roberts says she lives in Savannah, Georgia, and it gets really hot. She's got fans. She gives your electrolytes and water, but she's heard of people using misters in their run in the extreme heat. Do you recommend this? Oh, I see the shaking of the head.
Okay, I don't, because you don't want your chickens to get wet. One of the ways they stay cool is by fluffing their feathers up. That's how they stay warm as well. Kind of think about it. If you're super hot, like you're wearing a t-shirt and someone hoses you off, it feels great while you're being hosed off, but as soon as it's done, it gets like hot and clammy and it's stuck to you. Another problem with misters is they create puddles, which creates mosquito larvae. Now you've got a problem with mosquitoes. I think the fans, one thing I did when we lived in Virginia is I would freeze a gallon milk jug of water and hang it, and then in the window of the coop and have the fan blowing in. So it was kind of like making air conditioning. So if you can hook something like that up instead, I mean, if you blow a fan through a frozen milk jug of water, that air on the other side is really, really cool. So I would do that instead. Lots of ventilation. I'm not a fan of the misters. I just think you're asking for trouble. And if you live somewhere that it's humid, the last thing you want to do is put more humidity into the air, because you know how the humidity is what really makes you hot. It's not the heat as much as the humidity.
Bonnie has a question. Is it true hens will lay throughout the winter if you heat and keep the coop lit 24 hours?
Oh, it's more the light. They stop laying because they're not getting enough daylight. They need like 14 to 16 hours of daylight in order to lay eggs. So it's more the light. They will stop in extreme heat. So I suppose heating, so they're not using all their energy to stay warm would work. To me, if you do that, and I know this is super controversial as well, if you're lighting your coop and forcing your chickens to lay through the winter, are you really any better than a commercial chicken farm? I mean, that's what they do. And those chickens, after 2 years, are spent. People rescue these battery hens, and those poor chickens, I personally think they need a break. And if you can't do without eggs for a couple months, we eat a lot of oatmeal in the winter. I also freeze eggs when we have so many that I'm throwing them into the compost pile because we can't eat anymore. I just like whisk them up and pour them in ice cube trays and freeze them. And then we have eggs to use through the winter. So I don't force my chickens to lay. They've just gone through a molt. It's a lot of energy to grow those feathers back. So personally, I don't believe in heat. Well, heat is fire hazard and they don't need it and all that. So no heat, no light. I don't believe in it.
Can you feed them grass clippings if it's unfertilized turf?
I wouldn't. They can get impacted crops. So when they eat food, it gets held in this like tennis ball kind of thing where all the grit is, gets ground up, and then they digest it. If you give them grass clippings, you're giving them fairly long strands. So if your chickens are out free range chickens hardly ever get impacted crops because they're just nibbling a tiny bit of grass off the top of each piece of grass. If you're giving them clippings, they're eating fairly long strands, and you're going to end up with this ball of fibrous everything in their crops. So instead, if you're going to give them grass clippings, I would like snip them into 1/2-inch pieces, which would kind of be a lot. It's better just to let them out and eat the grass on their own.
What about weeds?
So weeds are kind of different because weeds aren't like dandelion greens. Those aren't really fibrous like, grasses, and the chickens will bang it against the ground and they'll, break it into pieces. You just want to be careful about like fibers, like hay, long grass fibers, but things like herbs and weeds and that, parsley and that's not really fibrous. They'll break that up.
How do you save money on feed? And does the type of feed you buy affect? I mean, if someone really wants to save money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But making sure their chickens are getting the right nutrients.
Right. So yes, the type of feed or the brand of feed, the quality of feed that you buy matters. So if you want to save money on feed, don't switch to a lower priced feed. Stay with a good quality feed that you either love. You've heard good recommendations, they have good references, whatever. And side note, just because the company is big and spends a lot of money on advertising doesn't mean that they have the best quality feed. So anyway, stick with a good quality feed and save money instead in other ways. So if you start fermenting the whole grain feeds like the Scratch and Peck or the Small Pet Select, you can ferment that feed. You just basically soak it in water for a couple of days. It creates probiotics. It creates all kinds of nutrients. Your chickens will eat less because there's more nutrients in it. So you're actually feeding them less feed for the same bang for the buck. If you grow them sprouts, in the winter, I grow fodder. You can sprout wheatgrass, things like that. The more you can let them out to free range, the less feed they'll eat, and the more gardening kitchen scraps you share with them. So there's ways to save money on feed without switching to a lower quality feed. I think that's the last thing you want to do is just switch to like the cheapest feed brand you can find, because in the long run, they're just going to eat more of it. So that's more trips to the feed store.
There's a very funny I'm just going to share this exchange because it made me laugh. Kim said, we have ducks and geese, so I go out 3 times a day to give them water because I put their water outside and I bash them out with a mallet. And then Jen wrote, well, hopefully you're bashing ice and not the bird. Oh goodness, forgot to say it was ice. So yes, bash the ice, not the birds. So cute. And Cindy's ducks push the chickens if they're drinking at the edge of the pool. Her ducks push the chickens in the water, which is mean.
It is mean, but it's not. I don't think ducks are mean. I think that at heart they're good natured. I think they're just very mischievous.
Yeah, they're silly.
They are. They don't mean to be mean spirited. Chickens are the mean ones. Ducks are the mischievous ones.
Are there any herbs that are a no-go for chickens?
Not really. All the culinary herbs and spices, by the way. Spices also have some great, cinnamon's great for respiratory health. Oregano's an herb. Never mind. Spices are good too, though. So the only herbs that I've ever read can be a problem is pennyroyal, which isn't a culinary herb anyway. So I don't know why you would be, thinking they could eat it. And comfrey taken internally, I've read, kind of mixed, but all of the the herbs that you're going to use in your cooking, your basil, cilantro, parsley, sage, thyme, dill, tarragon, lavender, pretty much anything else is going to be fine for them.
Red pepper flakes? Someone asked about that earlier.
Yeah, so that's one of the big, there are so many internet. I can't even, I just sit on my hands when I go on Instagram and watch reels because 90% of them are just such bad information. In some of the forums, like the Backyard Chickens, Backyard Chickens, I guess when I first started, I went on there and I realized you're just reading like thoughts from random people who you don't know who they are or what their credentials are. So I learned quickly groups and forums. It's just more bad information than good. And now I forget the question. Oh, red pepper flakes. So I did actually write a blog post on it this winter because I do add red pepper flakes to my chickens' feed in the winter, not to help them lay because I don't necessarily want them laying in the winter, as we described before. Also because eggs freeze in the winter. But the red pepper flakes do make nice orange egg yolks, and they also help with circulation. So it'll help in the winter. The chickens maybe won't get frostbite because they have better circulation to their extremities. Birds can't taste hot or spicy, so it's not going to, bother them. I give them jalapenos, I give them pepper seeds, all cayenne pepper. They can't taste any of it, so you don't have to worry about things being too spicy for them.
Can they have bean sprouts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I sprout mung beans and alfalfa, and sometimes like when I have seeds left over from the garden that I didn't plant, I'll just sprout those. And, once they get leaves and they're little sprouts, I just give them to the chickens. They love them. Ducks love them too.
The Murmas family said that, and I had this issue this winter after coming up to your place and seeing your sprouts. I tried sprouting. When I tried to sprout fodder, she says, it kept molding. How do I keep it from doing this? And mine molded as well. So what's the trick to sprouting?
You got to drain it really well. So sprouts are one thing. I usually do them in a mason jar. I'll put the seeds in, screw the cover on with either like a cheesecloth top, or they make these little wire tops, and then you rinse them and drain them 2 or 3 times a day. With the sprouts, I usually leave them upside down in the dish drainer rack for a little bit, just to make sure that all the water has drained out. And for the fodder, I usually do it in like a casserole dish. And again, just drain it really, really well. It helps that our air is really dry in our house in the winter because of the wood stove. But if you're having problems with the fodder molding, try doing sprouts and just leaving the mason jar upside down in the dish drainer rack. You can leave it like that all the time. I do it until I'm sure they've drained, but I think they actually also sell little racks that you can put your sprouting jars in that they actually stay upside down to make sure that there's no water pooling in the bottom.
Great. And is there an amount of herbs and or spices that should go in and on their feed, or is it just at your own discretion? And will they just divvy it up accordingly?
Yeah, excuse me, my chickens actually have their own herb garden. I planted one next to their coop in a raised bed. So when they free range, they can hop into the raised bed. And I noticed that they'll destroy your garden. Like if you let them into your garden, they'll eat the whole thing down to the ground. But in the herb garden, they just nibble. They'll nibble like a few basil leaves and move on to the thyme. Herbs are pretty potent. They've got a lot of really great health benefits. And again, I think the chickens know what they need when they need it. And they just kind of pick and choose and nibble a little and then hop out and go do their thing. So I'm big into free choice, letting them making their own choices. And they just kind of know how much they need.
Okay, Jen just made me laugh by saying, would it be too dark to feed them poultry seasoning? Ha ha ha. One that doesn't have salt, but no, there's all good.
Say, yeah,
marjoram,
yeah.
not onion, not onion.
I wouldn't. That's another thing I didn't mention. Onions can cause anemia. Garlic is in the same family, but has a lot less, and garlic is way more nutritious for them. So I do give mine garlic. Like when I cook with garlic, I cut the ends off and I'll throw that in their water for them, or give them a clove in their water every once in a while. Garlic powder also. But onions, I don't go out of my way to give them onions, but I don't. Look, if I gave them a salad and there's onions, I won't pick them out. They just usually won't eat them. That's another good way to figure out what's good for chickens and what's not. Throw a bunch of stuff out to them and see what they don't eat, because they usually know.
We are running out of time. So I'm going to go to a last question, which came through Nicole from Kim, who wrote into Modern Prairie. I've owned chickens for only a year now, but one of my girls is being bullied. Her feathers look matted near her tail. She's thin. Since I'm not sure which hen is the bully, I put her in a run by herself during the day until I get home to let them free range. But what can I feed her to put some more weight back on her?
Yeah, definitely a lot of protein. Scrambled eggs is great. Oats, the sunflower seeds, the dried grubs or mealworms, fish scraps, meat scraps, shrimp shells, anything like that. High protein. You don't want to just put like empty weight, like empty calories, like with the corn or something like that. But I'd say high protein type stuff to just kind of give her some bulk and get those feathers looking good again.
What about, before we go, which is coming in just a couple of minutes? Boy, this went fast. This is fascinating to me too. I'm having the best time.
Super fast.
Mushrooms, like shiitake mushrooms or button mushrooms. They probably won't like them, but
I stay away from mushrooms. I've done some reading and not a ton of research. I mean, mushrooms are kind of expensive. I don't really have leftover mushrooms ever. Some mushrooms can have fungus on them, so I just try to stay away from the mushrooms with them. I haven't like definitively said, but like we have mushrooms grow in our yard sometimes in the spring and they never eat them. So I think they probably wouldn't eat them.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm very excited because I'm gonna, when we're done here, after I pull the bread out of the oven, I'm going to take garlic out to the ladies because I haven't given them garlic yet. This was just phenomenal. Nicole, look how fast this went by. This was just, it's just so much fun too. So I want to thank you all so much. Lisa, thank you for all the incredibly valuable information. I could do 3 hours of this, I swear.
So much fun. I know. Someone asked if we were going to do another one. And yes, absolutely. We will be doing more as long as you guys are interested. Tell your friends, tell them all to sign up, go to the Modern Prairie website, sign up for the newsletter. And we'll definitely, I'll do as many as you want, because I love talking about this stuff. And I think it's so important to get good information out there, because there is so much bad information and it's hard, when you're first starting out, to know what to believe and what not to believe.
100%. I agree. And I think we should do one on chicken first aid. I really do. Because that's
absolutely
a big deal. Chicken health and first aid, medicine, supplements, antibiotics, things that they need when they need them. So I think that should be next. I'm very excited. All right. My bread is about to, Lisa, I'm going to let you have the final word while I pull this thing out of the oven, and then I'll come right back.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, this was very fun. I think Nicole will go through the questions. I will answer any that didn't get answered live, and we'll probably distribute those. And again, just make sure you're signed up to both our newsletters. If you go to freshdaily.com or modernprairie.com, sign up for the newsletters, tell all your friends, because we want to do more interactive things and definitely keep this going. And both of our sites are a good resource for all kinds of things. And hopefully Melissa's going to get ducks this summer. So if any of you are interested in ducks, we'll hopefully be doing maybe something actually together in person, IRL, as the kids say, about ducks. So,
Lisa, and there was a question mark about it being recorded and Melissa sourdough. Hold on, I want to take away from that because it's beautiful. This will be recorded. This will be shared out to those who registered. And to Lisa's point, we'll kind of go through all the questions and make sure they're answered, and we'll share those as well.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm so excited, and and thank you, Mary Kay. Yes, the bread smells as good as it looks. I'm still not getting the rise I want. So that's my next. Not sure. I'm going to figure this out though. Thank you all so much. I so look forward to seeing you again in whatever Modern Prairie workshops you attend, that I attend as well. And I check my yeast. There's no yeast in sourdough. Duck eggs make fluffy bread. All right. But not in sourdough.
There's no eggs in sourdough. Oh, and before we forget, we have a super exciting announcement that we're probably going to make in the next week or two, where we'll probably be doing a Facebook Live. So make sure you can follow us on Facebook as well, because we're working on a super top secret project.
We're doing a collab.
It's going to be good for pets and good for the planet and good for everything.
Yes, that we'll be paying it forward and creating something that we think people will really enjoy. So we can't wait to share that with you. So go have a weekend. Oh my gosh, the sun is coming out here for a second before the thunder and lightning starts. So I'm going to run out and visit the girls and take them some garlic. Thank you again, Lisa. Thanks, Nicole. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. This was fantastic. And I will see you all very, very soon. Be well. Stay safe and healthy and all that good stuff. And I send you lots of love. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.